Welcome to Brian's CPA review of core and common final examination. Today, we are going to review Audit Planning Memo, RAMP, approach portion. After the risk assessment is completed by auditor, the auditor now to decide how to approach audit planning. Effective audit approach begins with the current operation of business and any potential risks. Audit approach. There are two types of audit approaches. Substantive procedure. An audit procedure designed to detect material misstatement at the assertion level. Substantive procedure consists of tests of details and substantive analytical procedure. Tests of details include testing of balances and transactions. Substantive analytical procedure is analyzing trends and relationships for financial and non-financial data. Combined audit approach. An audit procedure designed to evaluate the operating effectiveness of controls in preventing or detecting and correcting material misstatements at the assertion level. Substantive approach. Substantive approach has no reliance on the operating effectiveness of controls. Auditor determines that internal control is weak and therefore cannot be relied upon. This approach is selected when control risk has been assessed as high. Auditor might select this approach even if controls are reliable. Combined approach. Under this approach, both tests of controls and substantive procedures are performed. If substantive do not provide sufficient audit evidence, test of controls is needed to obtain audit evidence. For example, if an entity uses high degree of judgment for transactions, the auditor would be concerned to obtain understanding of the operating effectiveness of controls, how the entity reached transaction amounts. If controls operate effectively, control risk is lower at the assertion level, reducing RMM at the assertion level. If substantive do not provide sufficient audit evidence, test of controls is needed to obtain audit evidence. Substantive versus combined approach scenarios. The goal in any audit planning is to have low audit risk. To achieve low audit risk, choosing whether auditor decides to reduce control risk when inherent risk is high. Remember that neither auditor nor entity can control inherent risk. However, entity can control risk to be low or high. Low control risk means that auditor can rely on internal controls of entity. The auditor will set the detection risk as high, thereby reducing control risk. The auditor must ensure to collect lots of evidence to make sure that risks are mitigated. The auditor will likely be able to detect any material errors. There is going to be a lot less substantive testing. The auditor should use combined approach in this case. Scenario 2's control risk is high, meaning that internal control can be relied upon. The auditor will set the detection risk as low. The risk of material misstatement was assessed to be high. Since the detection risk is at low, this means that the audit team will have to perform a higher amount of substantive testing in order to reduce the risk of not detecting a material misstatement. The auditor should use substantive approach in this case. Additionally, when inherent risk is low, it is not necessary to rely on controls when inheritance risk is lower. Auditors can leave control risk as high, and reasonable detection risk can be used. Substantive testing can be chosen by auditor to be used in this case. Let's look at two scenarios to understand this. Pizzeria is a small restaurant and is a private company. Pizzeria has been operating for years, and all accounting work is done by the restaurant and also is sent to an external audit firm to confirm the financial statements are accurate. The owner is away on vacation mostly, and the CPA of Pizzeria is looking after the company most of the times. The POS system is outdated, and employees often complain the number of transactions being declined. Inheritance risk is low in this scenario because it is a private company with only few users of financial statements. Not many users are relying on financial misstatements. Control risk is high because the CPA is looking after the restaurant instead of the owner, which means that high likelihood of fraudulent activity. Therefore, the auditor set the detection risk to be low. It is ideal to use substantive approach because auditors cannot rely on the internal controls. The likelihood of auditor detecting material misstatement is low for Pizzeria due to weak internal control. Since detection risk is set at low, that means that the audit team will have to perform a higher amount of substantive testing in order to reduce the risk of not detecting a material misstatement. Another scenario is Research Inc. is a large conglomerate for selling research data to various corporations worldwide. There are various hackers trying to get access to the Research Inc. company data. Research Inc. business model has large amount of estimates. Various clients have been quoted different rates based on what Research Inc. decide to charge. As a result, inheritance risk is high in this case. Research Inc. is a public company with many complex transactions. However, the internal control is assessed as strong, and the company has been profitable for decades. The company well manages its fraud risks, poor management attitude, and integrity and moral risk. Therefore, control risk is low in this case. Auditors can rely on the internal control to perform their audit. As a result, auditors set the detection risk as high as the likelihood that the auditor detecting material misstatement is low due to strong internal controls. Timing of audit planning. The approach needs to be assessed throughout the audit. If there has been major changes to the company throughout the audit, type of audit approach may change in accordance. Approach can be different for different accounts. For example, combined approach may be used to treat revenue account, but substantive approach may be used to treat accounts receivable account. Audit procedure example. Telegram Messenger LLC is a global platform that offers end-to-end encryption and cloud-based storage for its users. Telegram has over 500 million active users across 190 countries. Telegram's office accounting team is composed of qualified professionals. Telegram has strong controls in place to keep messaging transactions to ensure accuracy and completeness. Telegram does not generate any revenue from advertising and data collection. It runs solely on donations. Telegram is known to be less erroneous when it comes to year-end audit. We have to consider RAMP, starting with the risk assessment. When looking at the inheritance risk, Telegram is a publicly traded company. This increases the inheritance risk. There are many routine transactions with donations. This decreases the inheritance risk. Telegram is known to be less erroneous than other companies. This decreases inheritance risk. As a result, inheritance risk is assessed to be moderate for this case. Now to consider control risk. There is a strong internal controls in place which decreases control risk. We can conclude that the control risk is low for this case. Moving on to the approach portion in RAMP. Although there are inherent risks for Telegram that drive the risk to be moderate rather than low, controls operate efficiently. Control risk is lower at the assertion level, reducing RMM at the assertion level. Therefore, detection risk is high. The auditor is going to rely on the internal control, and the likelihood of auditor finding if there is a material misstatement is high due to strong controls in place. It is suggested that Telegram to use combined approach rather than substantive approach. Telegram should perform tested controls to determine the effectiveness of internal controls in preventing or correcting material misstatements. Telegram then should perform substantive testing to determine material misstatements in transaction or ending balances in the financial statements, also known as test of details. In summary, substantive approach is an audit procedure designed to detect material misstatement at the assertion level. Combined approach, both tests of controls and substantive procedures are performed. Detection risk is the likelihood that the auditor detects material misstatement. It can be controlled by auditor. That's it for the lesson on Audit Planning Memo approach portion. I hope you find the lesson helpful for your studies, and feel free to ask me if you have any questions. And remember to know all 4 sections of RAMP and start audit planning starting with a risk assessment, followed by approach, materiality, and then procedure. Practice makes perfect. Happy studying!